What's going on, Packers fans? Aaron Nagler here. Justis Mosqueda joining me from Acme Packing Company. It's day 2 of the legal tampering period, Justice, and I've been told it's all over. The Packers, they're in third place at best in the division to finish 2025. Don't even need to play it because they have failed. Apparently, that's what I've been told, Justice. How you doing?
Gutterball did it again. No, I mean, they're fine.
Oh, boy.
I think you told me coming into this, we're going to talk about edge rushers.
Yes, sir.
Think is unfortunate shake for the Packers for sure. Definitely view it as probably their number one need, question mark, going into
I don't think it's a question. I don't think there's any question mark. Take that question mark away. I mean,
all right. These are the only two retorts I have. Devontae Wyatt was not a starter last year, and it seemed like they did not want to play him as an every down player.
Right.
But the defensive tackle class is very deep. So I'm much less concerned about that just because of the strength of the draft. Wide receiver, still needing that speed guy. Again, but there's still options out there. Whereas pass rusher is really like there's a couple guys in the NFL who are good at it. And then everyone else is just kind of the same, man.
Right.
Like, that's the
well,
thing.
and that's why I'm not surprised that we haven't seen any movement yet today, although I suspect that'll probably happen either while we're recording or later when I'm live. But yeah, that's not surprising to see, not just the Packers waiting, but really the league kind of letting things settle after kind of the early flourish, right? But yeah, as far as like needs go, man, wide receiver, we've talked about it. I mean, sign MVS for a 1-year rental. I'm good there. Like, I don't know if that's going to happen, but that would make sense. They'll draft somebody and away they'll go.
Right.
We saw the addition at corner yesterday. I doubt that means they're done, quote unquote, but it certainly gives them flexibility, right? And a lot of different bodies. You know, and I know you always think they're set at corner. So
I think Keyshawn still might be corner 1.
Oh, I think he is. Especially,
I think Hobbs came in as corner 2.
I agree.
So, like, what do you mean done? Like, I wouldn't be surprised if the Packers drafted one in the 3rd.
They'll draft, but that's what I mean. Like, I'm talking free agency. You know what I mean? I'd be very surprised if they added somebody in free agency at this point. I do think the makeup of the room right now, and we're under the assumption still here in these parts that Jair Alexander will be released at some point. I know there's a lot of hopeful thinking going on.
I'm not buying it.
No, neither. Yeah, he's still.
I just think they're sitting on it. I mean, there were teams that needed corners. They spent money on corners. Pretty soon, like someone's gonna sign like Asante Samuel Jr. Right. Maybe someone likes Rasul, but Rasul really kind of took a step back last year.
Yeah, it's going off a really poor 2024, no doubt.
And then we're gonna get into this draft class where the stuff at the top is pretty shaky, man. Like you're talking about probably 2 of the 4 most talented players. Well, one is Travis Hunter. He just won a Heisman. Who knows if he's going to play corner and receiver? Unless you're picking top 3.
Talking about
unless you're picking top 3, you're not going to have the option for him to play either position for you, right? Will Johnson seems to be slipping down boards a little bit. He's not going to work out until his pro day, or he's working out not at Michigan's pro day, but he's going to have a independent pro day after that because he's dealing with injuries.
A lot of those corners are, though. That's the other
Morrison,
thing, right?
The Notre Dame guy, has the hip issue that ended his season. The ECU kid tore his ACL. Like, there's going to be a spot where it's like, if you didn't grab a corner in free agency, you might get a little more desperate during draft time, especially if, Barron starts getting pushed up the board, the kid from Texas. And maybe that's when the Packers end up trading Jair.
They moved Jair. Exactly. I mean, that's absolute potential there. But yeah, to me, man, look, you mentioned the defensive tackle class, very deep. And you're right. They didn't play Wyatt nearly as much. And also he couldn't stay on the field, right? I mean, there were 2 games last year where he was cooking out of the gate, first 10, 12 snaps, and then had to leave because of injury. I do think there's a decent chance they add there in the draft.
For sure.
But as far as pass rush help in free agency, heading into the official start of it tomorrow on Wednesday, we're recording this on Tuesday afternoon. I mean, I still think there are opportunities out there. And I know the headliner for everybody is a trade, for Hendrickson with the Bengals. I think that's a non-starter. I would be absolutely shocked if the Packers made that kind of splash and commitment, both whatever the draft comp might be, and then having to sign him to a monster extension. I'd be surprised if that was the move.
From my understanding, he doesn't even have the market that DK had, and the Seahawks were blasting everywhere, right? We're like, hey, DK, our prices dropped. Someone please call us and beat a 3rd round pick. and I don't think Hendrickson is going to get even that, right? Like, I don't think he's going to get the second that DK went for. And I don't know. There's been rumors that the initial asking price that the Bengals are asking for is basically what the Seahawks' initial asking price was, which is a complete and total non-starter for any team that has a working brain.
That's kind of the way things go, though, right? I mean, you always start way high, and everyone laughs, and then eventually you come down.
But that's what I mean. Like that middle ground. I don't know if that middle ground is a second round pick. Like I think it's probably
I hear you. Like a third.
Lower.
Yeah,
but I don't know if the Bengals would do it. So I don't like. The Bengals last year just gave him like a bunch of money, and we're just like, shut up for 1 year, and he was like, okay. So I guess that's the way that they handle things. Yeah, the defensive end market was really weird. I mean, it didn't help that Khalil Mack signed before the tampering period started, right? He re-signed
right off the board.
And then Chase Young's, I don't know how familiar people are with the contract structure of Chase Young and Byron Murphy, but they were never actually technically free agents. So the way that it worked is they have those void years tacked onto the end, but the date that they void was actually midnight tonight on Tuesday.
Right.
So they weren't.
For those of you who are unaware, Chase Young back with the Saints.
He re-signed with the Saints. So they were like, I'm miffed we didn't get either one of them because they would have been good pass rushers.
Yeah.
But you can't fault the Packers for that because they literally were not on the market yet, right?
Exactly.
They just agreed to go back, and everyone has money right now because we got the big old cap bump that was a little bit unexpected. So hard to blame them. I don't even know. Like, I understand people are mad about the pass rusher situation. But show me the contract that you wanted, that the Packers actually had the opportunity to sign. Like at cornerback, if you wanted higher caliber cornerback, I think you could find the contracts, right? Like you could say maybe like I would have been willing to pay a Debo this much money, or or I would have. I guess Murphy doesn't count because Murphy never hit the market, but there were opportunities there. Pass rusher, I'm not sure how many true opportunities were out there, and you're looking at the guys who are still left today as we're writing this. I'm 1:12 Pacific time, right? So it's Von Miller, who hasn't started in 2 years. Designated pass rusher is going to cost a lot of money. Something that you can do, right?
But end of the line career wise, I would be very surprised if Brian Gutekunst,
and he's not starting. He's playing third downs.
A situational aging pass rusher,
right?
Yeah, no, I don't see that.
So we got that. We got Leonard Floyd, who's a lot closer. He was just released by the Niners, who seemed like they're going to sign Joey Bosa, right? So we can knock off one there.
Yeah.
Leonard Floyd, who is much closer as a pass rusher at this point to a Kingsley Enagbare than a Rashawn Gary. So probably not there either if you want to keep your options open for the draft, right?
Yep.
Zadarius Smith, I think that bridge is burned.
Burned well to the ground, and the ashes have been scattered, no doubt.
He would make a lot of sense if that bridge was just not completely decimated and pulverized, right?
Right.
And then once you get beyond that, man, it's like, do you want to take a gamble on like a Josh Uche?
That's a name that I think makes a little sense. We've talked about Ojulari from the Giants. That's a guy that probably doesn't really fit with what the Packers have done traditionally.
Right.
But he could give you pass rush help. There's no doubt about that. There's one other guy, NFC East as well, in Dante Fowler, who I think, man, it sure sounds like it's getting messy here at the last stages of his. It sounds like he's going to hit the market. Now, we're still, again, we were about a little over under 24 hours away from that being official, and they could re-sign him in the next kind of overnight, right? But there's a player who's got the skill set that the Packers would probably like, definitely still productive. Again, problematically, when you're talking about Green Bay, he's over 30 years old. Again, on the back nine of his career, doesn't really fit the mold for what the Packers like to do. But he's one guy where I could see maybe they make an exception. That and Ojulari are the two more realistic, I think, possibilities when you're talking about the Packers adding something to an edge group that, look, right now, the plan is what? DeMarcus Covington coaches his ass off? I mean, if you're running it back with all the same guys and whatever you add in the draft, that appears to be the plan sitting here the second day of
January. I don't know how much it is the staff gassing up their players to just keep morale high and stuff like that. But they've said they're like, we need to get home with 4.
Right.
Also, we like the guys that we have in our defensive line room. And I'm like,
they keep
okay, so
saying
then
that
you think
too.
it's coaching. You
Yep.
think it's coaching, and
Right.
you're just not outright saying it. And the firing of the previous defensive line coach Rebrovich would be kind of a point in that column if we're counting tallies, right? But I sure would like to just give me a dice roll, man. I'm not saying
Augment
that.
it a little bit. Yeah,
I just want to say,
totally agree.
give me one guy who's given me a chance to win on third downs. Like, just give me Uche. He could be a designated pass rusher. He'll come down only on third downs. I'm cool with it. Just let me do that. I mean, there are going to be options in the draft. At this point, like if you're asking me, like a guy who has like a 20% chance to sign in Green Bay, not even
Right.
a 20% chance,
Right.
but like a semi-realistic chance to sign in Green Bay. Like I'm paying attention to Uche. And then outside of that,
100%.
I'm just like, if one comes, I'll write it up at APC. Outside of that, I'm not really expecting too much out of the free agent DN class. Like,
What about
draft.
Matthew Judon? He's got
he
history with Covington.
Year.
I know, but he's got the Covington connection.
Man, pass rush production has gone down the tank. That is not the guy that I think the Packers need.
I mean, you and I think that, but I'm trying to get in their shoes here. And if Covington like vouches for him and goes to Hafley and LaFleur and says, "Hey, trust me, I know the numbers aren't great, but I can work with this guy and I can make him productive," maybe that's the way they go.
Maybe we'll see.
I mean, I'm not going to be excited about it. I'm just trying because look, before yesterday, no one was talking about Banks as an addition to the offensive line before it happened, right? So I'm just trying to like cast a net here and say, because I can't imagine, Justis. I cannot imagine that the idea is we're going to draft 1 or 2 guys and we're going to roll completely with, we're just going to improve from within. it feels very Packery, but I can't imagine it. I know.
So it's not even you're not even like you don't even have to bank on LVN being a starter, right? Like that's the competition there.
And that's the elephant in the room, isn't it? I mean, the fact that you took this swing 13th overall for a player who can't even out-snap. Forget Kingsley Enagbare, who was at least a draft pick. I mean, he can't out-snap someone drafted guys. It's not great, Justis. It's not great.
I'm with you. I think it's a problem. I would say, like, one interesting guy who's hanging out there is Bryce Huff.
That's true.
He is so if you guys don't remember, the Eagles signed him to a pretty significant, I mean, not even pretty, like a major deal last offseason.
Right.
What's interesting about Huff is a designated pass rusher. No one is mistaking him for a pure defensive end. The situation that the Eagles have found themselves in is that he was inactive for the Super Bowl. He was active for other games and stuff like that, even during the playoff run, but he was inactive for the Super Bowl. How much do they like him? Probably not very much. Here's the problem. They guaranteed him a roster bonus that is going to trigger. It has to be paid out by the first week of the season, but it's going to trigger, right? Is there a way that you can work with the Eagles where they say, hey, we want to get off of this contract. We're tied up by this contract right now. And even with all the Eagles things that the Eagles do and Howie Roseman does, right? And the cap manipulation, they've guaranteed enough that this has become a problem. So can we get some cap relief? We'll take some of the money. You send us a draft pick and you get this guy basically on a 1-year rent, a veteran designated pass rusher on a 1-year rental. And then have, I think it ends up working out to like basically like 2 team options after that. I think that would be something that would be smart considering the market that's out there right now.
Exactly. I mean, look, and that's the thing. That's really kind of where I wanted to lead this conversation. I'm glad you kind of helped me segue there, because the idea that, okay, it's less than 2 days into the quote unquote start of free agency, though I know it's the tampering period before the actual beginning, and the amount of doom and gloom I see online from Packers fans, man, there's a long way to go. And there are things like you just suggested that I know most folks probably don't have in their mind or even thinking about, but I have to have faith in a pro personnel group or just a personnel group in general that has spent the last year knowing the predicament they were in when it came to their pass rush after watching everything that transpired last season as far as a completely toothless front four. they know their issue and they have to have some ideas how they want to fix it with personnel. I can't imagine in a million years it's just, oh, we're firing the defensive line coach. I got to have more faith in that.
Yeah, I'd be pretty surprised. Again, I think they add at least one guy, whether that's via trade, what one high caliber guy, right? I'm talking like first 2-round picks or a trade.
Mm-hmm.
At defensive end, I think they're gonna look at the wide receiver market, what like they're what they're able to swallow, I guess, is going to be interesting to see what kind of price range they want to be in. And then I think defensive tackle, they're going to go pretty high. And then outside of that, this roster can pretty much play a football game right now. I know they got to add some depth, like even at like back end on the offensive line, linebacker, cornerback, but I think the rest of the starters are already on the team. I think those are the only positions that you have a chance to really kind of make a huge impact. So, yeah, I mean, I think they're still going to be in the DN market moving forward. I just don't know how realistic the Trey Hendrickson thing is because it seems like the Bengals still want to keep that contract. Meanwhile, like the Eagles and Bryce Huff and all that stuff. Miami is interesting. They just restructured Bradley Chubb's deal. He missed all of last season, but it seems like they want to keep him. They were in the Joey Bosa conversations, right? It was down to them in San Francisco.
Right.
They've spent high draft picks on the guys that they have. So I don't know what guy they were trying to move off of there. And maybe, Miami.
There's someone that sifts through.
Right, exactly. Like maybe Miami is a team that's willing to get off of one of these contracts for a pass rusher. And that's another option. But, things will start to develop. It's a good pass rusher class in this draft too, in the first round. I mean, there's guys who have a lot of talent. Who knows where they end up going, and maybe post draft, some more options open up even if some of those guys don't land or aren't on the board at 23 for the Green Bay Packers. But I don't doubt that they're going to be able to figure something out at defensive end.
Well, and that's the other component too here, right? Like no matter what they do, and say it is underwhelming, right? And we're sitting here going into the season thinking, oh my gosh, it's going to be a repeat of last year. The one comfort I can take away is that Hafley showed that he can adjust, right? Like no matter what you give him, he's going to figure out a way of making it work even with the toothless pass rush we saw last year. They were still pretty damn good. They were a top 10 unit. It's not like
you have Cooper for a full season. You have Quay, who second half of the year he looked like he improved.
Yep.
You have 2 blitzing corners now, 2 guys who have played in the slot, and they're probably going to start for you at outside corner at this point.
Yeah.
Even if you have to blitz from the second level, and you are rushing 4, but you're dropping a defensive lineman, like there's a ways to kind of manipulate that stuff now. So,
and we saw that a few times last year. I mean, look, McKinney looked like he was ready to, blitz on every down if he was asked to. I mean, go back and watch that Texans game. I mean, he was utilized really effectively near the line of scrimmage. I mean, Charles Woodson-esque at times. So, I mean, that is obviously not the preference. We heard both Matt LaFleur and Brian Gutekunst talk all repeatedly about having to get home with 4. Well, okay, but I suspect you can't just roll back the same 4. That's where I'm coming from. But
I wonder if I mean, we'll see. We'll see how much they actually like LVN. I mean, I think that might be.
It's a big key, man. That's why I asked Brian about it at the podium at the combine, because I wanted to see what he would say in front of the cameras. And I don't know if you remember, but he got a little brisk. He got a little short about it. Like, because the question was, is this a big year for, because it had just come on the heels of a question about development of young players. And so I followed up with, is this a big year for Lucas Van Ness? Oh, it's a big year for all our players. Well, okay. But the question is specifically about your 13th overall pick, who has done bupkis through his first 2 years in Green Bay. It's a huge component, I think, to trying to solve this thing.
Because I think, from my perspective, I just think a lot of names got taken off of the market right before.
I mean, the night before, literally.
Right. Yeah.
So it's like,
but if they actually like LVN and they really want to give him that room, then what it'll look like is they'll draft a guy in like the 3rd or something like that.
Yep.
But we won't have those answers until draft weekend.
Quite a while from now. But in the meantime, there are some options out there to watch for and to look out for if you're a Packers fan. And do not despair. The Packers coming off 11 wins. Like I mentioned, they had a top 10
we're
defense.
bums. We
top
can't
5 offense.
No quarterback, no coach, no GM. We can't do anything
Bunch
right.
of bums,
Somehow we're in the
Justis.
playoffs every year.
Bunch of bums, Justis. I'm telling you. I love it. I love it. Well, I'm just glad that I don't have to pay attention to the Packers in 2025. I can just go on about my life because it's already over. They've
Honestly,
already lost the
all
division.
Right. That was my snarky thing when Hobbs signed. Because I got in the APC Slack.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, Hobbs, like 48 million. And I was like, what? Who? Like Packers, 4 years. Because everyone was signing 3-year contracts.
3-year
right?
deals.
That's the other thing, too.
That's been the wave.
Yeah,
Yes.
I'm doing
right.
48 divided by 3. And I'm like, for a slot? Because I didn't even consider him an outside corner. They say us. And I'm like,
what?
All right, I need more information.
I mean, he did play. What's interesting is he did play 1 year on the perimeter.
He did his second
for the
season,
Raiders.
Yep, he did.
And it is so funny watching Raiders fans like divided on he was good or it was terrible. Like that's why you never ask the fans. Like I've gotten so many mixed. Reports.
Packers fans hate Keyshawn.
I know, and he played really well last year.
Keyshawn was on this free agency market. He probably would have gotten something very similar to what Hobbs would have gotten.
Agreed.
And that makes the deal that he's on, that $6 million deal per year deal, very valuable to the Packers.
Yes, sir. Very much correct.
Yeah.
You're talking about.
I think everyone just hates corners now. Like if you don't have 10 interceptions.
Well, yeah, because the league is set up for you to hate them because it makes it so easy for the receivers.
It's like offensive linemen. Like, well, I remember that one sack that he gave.
I know. Out of the thousands of snaps he played last year, that one time he got beat. I used to talk about Gary about that all the time. It's so annoying. It's so because it changes the perception. Like one play.
Well, that's the one that gets clipped up, right?
Yes, and passed around on social, etc. 1,000%. All right, Justis, really appreciate it, man. Make sure you're checking out his work at Acme Packing Company. Justis, talk to you next week, man.
See you.